You are now tuned into Virtually Impossible Presents Lazy Learning Land podcast, where we teach teachers how to be lazier yet more effective to increase student performance but decrease teacher burnout and stress. I'm S.Dot, your hostess that always gives you the mostest while doing the least, also known as the queen of working and not working. With over 15 years experience in the hood schools, and I absolutely love it, I am here to share with you all the tricks of the trade I have developed that will make your life as a teacher much easier and even help you to fall back in love with the profession. Today's episode is sponsored by Lazy Learning Land on TikTok, where we skip all the fluff and give you the real deal stuff. You can watch teacher tips shorts, comedic shorts, and even watch me interact with my real students during class periods, all while implementing tips that I share with you. So go follow Lazy Learning Land on TikTok and enhance your experience. And now for today's episode. All right. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Lazy Learning Land podcast. I am your hostess, S.Dot, and we got a great show in store for you all today. You know, normally I'm on my comedic, sarcastic tip, but today I'm tapping into my emotional side, and we're really going to hone in on how to deal with that separation anxiety when it comes to the end of the year and you're having to say goodbye to your students and that heartbreak that you feel knowing how much you've poured into those students and now having to watch them walk out your classroom door for the last time. And I'm going to be real with y'all. I never had a clue that this was a real thing. Like, true story, I was scrolling through TikTok on my Lazy Learning Land teacher account, and I came across a post on my For You page or my FYP page. And it was of a teacher who had just finished up her third year in the profession. And she had stated that it would also be her last year teaching and she was not going to be returning. So naturally I was intrigued. And the reason she mentioned for her not returning was because of the emotional trauma and strain she endures at the end of the school year. She was mentioning that the time when she has to say goodbye to her students that she literally has grown to love as if they were her own, those times she just couldn't take that emotional toll anymore. And I was baffled. I was intrigued. And then I started going into the comment section for this particular post. Y'all, I saw hundreds of teachers co-signing, responding with similar feelings, some saying things like they are still teaching, but they experience the separation trauma year after year. And then others chiming in saying that they're no longer teachers. Either they are retired or they've left the profession, but they don't miss having that feeling. And y'all, I was real deal Holyfield shocked. I mean, literally, because I truly did not know that this separation anxiety and trauma was really a thing. See, I've never experienced it before, and I've been teaching 15 plus years. And okay, it may mostly be tied to the fact that I have an anxious attachment style, meaning when I was growing up, emotional connection and emotional support was kind of unpredictable in my life. So that probably ultimately aided in me naturally building close, but yet still far enough away relationships with my students to where I never had to actually experience it. But me being the nerd I am, I was like, okay, let me kind of look into this. You know, I want to get into the real nitty gritty. I'm going to get off the, this therapy couch. I'm out here telling y'all stuff I need to be talking to with my therapist about my anxious attachment style and stuff. But I literally thought, how come teachers don't act more like foster parents? Like, my ADD, ADHD, my brain is very solution oriented. So when I came across this problem, I'm like, well, the answer is easy. Just act like the foster parents act like, because at the end of the day, foster parents still got to get those kids back at the end of the term. And I was really wondering why teachers don't utilize the same strategies as foster parents. And that's when I began to research. And now I present to you today's episode of Real Bonds and Boundaries, what teachers can learn from foster parents. what teachers can learn from foster parents. You see, this is where we can learn valuable lessons from them. These people are actual experts, like in the field, okay? In the heat of things, creating and nurturing connections while at the same time maintaining the boundaries necessary for both the child and their own well-being. You see, foster parents know exactly what teachers are going through. Now, a lot of other people walking the face of this earth don't, but when it comes to creating emotional bonds and then being forced to abruptly detach after a certain amount of time, foster parents understand. And when it's time to return the children to their biological families, teachers really could learn a thing or two from foster parents. So let's get into these tips, y'all, because I had to do some research. Like this one took me some time. All right. Because I wanted to make sure I was coming from a knowledgeable but yet organic place for you. You see, the first thing is to understand the role of being a temporary guardian. Y'all, foster parents do a great job of embracing the concept that their role is temporary. They know that they are going to provide stability, care, and support all during a child's critical time in life. And to parallel it, as teachers, it is critical for us to remember that our footprint in our students' lives is permanent. Our footprint is permanent, but our role is still temporary. So here's a pro tip. Remind yourself regularly that your goal is to foster independence, to equip your students with the skills and knowledge they need to succeed beyond your classroom and beyond your reach. Remember to regularly reflect on your long-term goals as a teacher. What do you want your students to take away from their time in your classroom? Now let's move along to number two. Number two, set clear boundaries. Foster parents are often advised to set clear, healthy boundaries with the children in their care. And this not only protects the emotional well-being of the child, but it also helps the foster parent to manage their own emotions. You see, in a similar manner, we as teachers can benefit from establishing these boundaries that define the teacher-student relationship. And this may include setting specific times when a student can and cannot contact you. It may also include being mindful of the amount of personal information and the amount of your personal experiences you share with a student or with your students. And here's a pro tip. Clearly communicate your boundaries to your students in a kind but firm manner and stick to them. Have boundaries, but you have to stick to those boundaries. Because we know kids, they gonna test us. They gonna try us. They really gonna see if we be meaning what we say we be meaning. So set your boundaries, make them clear, but also stick to them. All right. So moving right along, we've got number 3, encourage self-reliance. You see, one of the key goals of foster care is to empower children and to develop resilience and independence. Foster parents often focus on teaching life skills and encouraging children to solve problems on their own. And while at the same time, while they're doing this, they are still providing those children or that child with guidance and support. So they're still there for the kids, but they're not overly there for the kids. And as teachers, we can adopt a very similar approach. You can encourage your students to think critically, to solve problems independently, and to take responsibility for the parts of their life that they can control, such as their learning and the way they respond to adverse situations. This is going to help them to build confidence and reduce the likelihood of them becoming over-reliant on you. And for my elementary and primary teachers, bless your heart now. But encouraging independence in your students helps to prevent them from becoming overly needy and overly clingy, ultimately creating a balanced teacher-student relationship while at the same time helping to reduce the risk of emotional distress on both your part and on the student's part when it's time to move on to the next grade level. Here's your pro tip. Incorporate problem-solving activities into your lessons that encourages students to work through their challenges either on their own or within their peer groups. Offer support and guidance when a student is struggling, but be sure to resist the urge to overly coddle and resist the urge to give the answers or to hover too much, so on and so forth. Like, give those kids the opportunities to problem solve, kind of work through it themselves, make some mistakes, so on and so forth. All right. Now, number four, practice empathy without over-identification. Practice empathy without over-identification. Now, you see, foster parents are trained on how to show empathy without over-identifying with the children in their current care. They are able to understand the importance of being compassionate and understanding, yet they are able to still maintain a professional distance. And I know you're like, but how is it professional if it's more of that, parental child relationship? Well, they incorporate both of them. And I think as a teachers, practicing empathy means for us to listen to our students, validate their feelings, and offer them support, but also doing our very, very best to not take on their emotional burdens as your own. Okay, well, let me say it like this. Trying not to take on too many of their emotional burdens as your own, because it is in our nature. We're in a service profession, so it's in our nature to be overly caring and whatnot, but we do need to be cognizant of when we're just making every child's problems our own, or every time these, specific children have an issue, that we take on every single issue that particular child has. I know some of us can't help but do it, but let's try to do it in moderation. And I think you'll start to see a difference when it's time to separate, if you can moderate, or, if you can make those modifications to how often you do that. And the pro tip, when a student shares a personal problem with you, do practice active listening, do offer support, but also encourage them to seek additional help outside of you. Meaning, do help them to connect with the counselor or with the program that fits their needs or the needs of their family, so that those people can kind of pull more of that emotional load. You can still be there to listen and to support, encourage, and double check behind them and ask them, hey, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Hold them accountable, but you still want to make sure that you're not overstepping your professional boundaries too much by becoming too emotionally involved in a student's issues. Pro tip, don't hesitate to reach out for help if you are feeling overly attached to a student or their life situation, because sometimes simply talking through your feelings with someone, and y'all, this can be a coworker, a family member, a counselor of your own, a mentor, but just find somebody that can provide enough clarity to help you reestablish your boundaries with that particular student or students. Again, ultimately to help avoid that separation trauma at the end of the year. Y'all, this may be one of my shortest episodes ever, but it's short, sweet, and deep. Okay, but we are now to the conclusion of this. So we're going to sum this thing all the way, all right, as each school year starts. Similarly, you should know that each school year must come to an end. And it is natural to feel a deep sense of loss, knowing that the students that you have nurtured, that you have guided and cared for will soon move on. And this pain is a true testament to the powerful connections you have built. And it is also a reflection of your passion as an educator and as a teacher. Just as foster parents must say goodbye to the children they have cared for, so must you. And both foster parents and teachers alike have to trust that they have provided them with the tools they need to thrive. They have to trust that their influence will continue to resonate with each of those children long after they have left your side. By embracing your role as a temporary guide, as a temporary guardian, setting clear boundaries, fostering self-reliance, practicing empathy without over-identifying, and seeking support when you need it, you can find the healthy balance that allows you to be the compassionate, effective teacher your students need without losing yourself in the process. So remember, the end of a school year is not the end of your influence. It's the beginning of your students' next chapter, shaped in part by the love and guidance you have given to them. So embrace the bittersweet farewells, knowing that you have made a major difference, and trust that by maintaining a healthy balance of connection and boundaries, you will be ready to do it again with the next group of young minds that enters your classroom. Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Virtually I'm Possible presents Lazy Learning Land Podcast. Comment below your thoughts on real bonds and boundaries, what teachers can learn from foster parents. What are some super awesome things you do to build relationships with your students? And which of these strategies will you be more intentional about implementing in order to protect your emotional well-being? Since there is strength in lazy, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast, my blog on virtuallyimpossible.net, no apostrophe, and our social media platforms. You can find us on TikTok under Lazy Learning Land, on Pinterest under Virtually I'm Possible, no apostrophe, and Instagram under virtually_I'm_possible. So you can feel at home among other lazy learners. This is your girl S.Dot signing off. And until next episode, remember to live long and lazy and never, ever work too hard.